Hello and welcome to episode 117 of the HamCorp training manual. In this episode, we craft the first UEV components, set up the space pumping module and network switch with QoS, which turns out to be unnecessary, and finally, we redo the Platline for the third time. We're back in this random place. Where am I? Alright, back on Earth. Now, let's take a look together at what kind of parts go into UEV parts. So, the UEV motor needs cosmic neutronium, draconium, infinity. Infinity is easily going to be the most painful part of all of this. And I need long-attuned tangum rods. Long-attuned tangum rods come from purified long tangum rods, and these come from combining tangum rods, which comes from purified tangum ingots, which we can get just from smelting purified tangum. And purified tangum comes from raw tangum dust in an electromagnetic separator, and raw tangum dust is the end product of ore processing. I have a good amount of raw tangum dust to get started with, so that's nice. But let's look at some of these other components while we're at it. Nether star fluid pipes, circuits up to UEV, and some gravistars. So it's pretty doable, it's just the infinity is going to be very painful. But once I finish the You Know the Drill quest, I can make the space pump, which is the whole reason I started getting back into progression. I'm not really ready to progress yet. I still want to make at least a Compact Fusion 3, but before that I want to get the space pump. So let's do that. Now you may have noticed I made 2 pumps, and the reason is I need 2 pumps to make the Mark 1 space pumping module. I also need an infinite oil gas fluid drilling rig, which I haven't made yet. And in fact, this quest is a prerequisite for the pump quest, and making this is pretty easy at this point. All the materials here are easy to get. The only thing that's different is the research. It needs an oil gas fluid drilling rig 4, but it also needs 2048 computation per second. The quantum computer setup that I had before could not do this. It was only 1920, but I have since added 2 more computer racks, so this should be able to do it no problem. Besides the infinite drilling rig, I also need a planetary gas siphon, a bunch of infinity, some cosmic neutronium, UEV circuits, nothing crazy. And the scan here is a planetary gas siphon. One thing I will say though, is that both of these scans are going to take a long time. The total computation here, divided by my actual computation per second, gives me that I'm going to have to wait about 3 hours to finish both the scans. I found on the wiki that I am overlooking a mechanic. There's overclocking and overvolting. I forgot about that. I no longer need to use APUs. I can actually use the wetware mainframes and they're pretty good. Or even the bio mainframes. So according to the wiki, I can go all the way up to 53,352 computation per second. But it's going to cost me about 20 amps of UV to operate, which is fine. I can live with that. So I'm going to get a couple of BioWare mainframes and replace these APUs. And then let's see how fast I can do this research. Alright, I got off my ass and I moved everything upstairs. So here I have my optical and laser connections for the research station. They come from an active transformer. This thing gets powered with 256 amps of UV from below. I'm also outputting 64 amps of UV into my quantum computer. This thing has now been fitted with 8 bio mainframes and cooling cores. And I have done a backup because I don't know if the wiki values are outdated or not. So this is a bit of a test. Now, for this setup, I need to use very specific values. Overclock is 1.92 and overvolt is 1.61. Now we'll see if this blows up in a few seconds. Or maybe in a few minutes, I don't know. Now I am curious to see how fast this is. So let me do the infinite drilling rig first. This is pretty fast. This is significantly faster than whatever I had before, but I don't think it's 53,000 computation per second. Oh, I'm a dingus. So the value I stated, 53,000, is for 24 racks. I only have 4 racks. I just failed a literacy check. Anyway, this is pretty stable. This is going to go. This is a lot faster than 3 hours. This will be done pretty quickly, I think, relatively speaking. So I'll just be back when this is done, and I'll be back with my pump. Now that I have the space pumping module, there is something I need to do before I can actually set it up. Now I have a single quantum computer down here that is providing computation directly to the space miner, but now I need to find a way to split it to also provide it to the space pumping module. And the way to do that is with a network switch with QoS. So let me craft this up and then let's see how it works. So the network switch with QoS has been set up. it needs a bit of power, so I've given it a UV energy hatch. Conceptually, it's very similar to the active transformer, except instead of power, it's splitting computation. However, you do have the ability to configure how the computation is distributed. At the bottom, I have a reception connector. This receives computation from the quantum computer. And here at the top, I have 3 transmission connectors. Each one goes to a different module. This third one isn't implemented yet, but there's space for it. Now, if you look at the machine itself, there is a full row of inputs. And if you scan the transmission connectors, it tells you what the ID is. In this case, it's ID1 for the magenta, ID2 for the cyan, and ID3 for the unconnected one. So that corresponds to this. So this one over here, destination 1, these 2 slots correspond to the magenta, the next 2 slots correspond to the cyan, and so on. You can also change the value if you want to change which one corresponds to what, but I'm not going to do that. Now you can split the computation evenly, or you can split it unevenly if you want. If you want to split it evenly, you just give everything the same weight, and every transmission connector will get the same amount of computation. If you want to split it unevenly, you give them different weights, and more heavily weighted destinations will receive more computation. I'm just going to split it evenly for now. Destination ID 1 gets a weight of 1. If I leave it like this one now has computation, but this one does not. Now if I set the weight of ID number 2 to 1 as well, this one has computation, half as much. And this one has computation as well. It's been evenly split. And with that, the space pumping module now has computation, which is great. It receives power from the main structure, of course, so it also has power, which means at this point, this is pretty much operational. I need to add output hatches and maybe some kind of dedicated fluid storage over here, and then I can start pumping. Here, there are 3 parameters I can set. The number of parallels, which I'm going to leave at 4, the planet type, and the gas type. Now, based on the planet and gas type, I can pump various different fluids. And I'm going to start with the basics, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and then I can actually remove whatever old setups I had for oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen. So I'm going to make some fluid storage cells and set this up. I'm apparently pretty much out of hydrogen, so let's start with that. I have a 1024K hydrogen partitioned sticky cell, and let's turn this thing on. And by the way, I can only do 1 gas per module, so I'm going to have to make more if I want to cover everything. Anyway, let's see how fast this is. 6.2 million per second. And you know the crazy thing is, it's all being consumed like basically instantly. There we go. Now it's building up. Look at that speed. Oh my god. That's crazy. This amount, by the way, is because I have 4 parallels. And the amount listed on NEI is the amount you get per second per parallel. So I'm getting 4 times this amount per second. That is pretty good. However, it does use a lot of power, 7.8 million EU per tick. That is something to consider. Now, I'll get more pumps going in the background, and for now, let's take a look at compact fusion. So the structure itself needs 1662 fusion machine casing Mark II. This is easy to make, but the cost is going to add up. I need 560 advanced compact fusion coils. This is probably the most expensive part of this, and I'm now realizing that I said a few episodes ago that I could upgrade my precise auto assembler. I never got around to doing that. So while I'm doing this, I'm also going to upgrade that to Mark IV, but I only need Mark III to actually do this. This is going to be very expensive. I think this is going to be the majority of the cost. Besides that, I need some osmium glass, some neutronium frame boxes, UV energy hatches, yada yada. This does also accept GregTech, so I can use a laser hatch instead, or multiple laser hatches. The controller itself needs 48 Mark III fusion control computers, and a bunch of relatively trivial stuff in comparison to that, but actually nothing new, surprisingly. The scan needs a Mark II compact fusion computer controller. This one is similar. It needs 48 Mark II fusion control computers and some other stuff. And the scan for this, of course, is a Mark I compact fusion controller. And the Mark I is not even an assembly line recipe, but it does need 48 fusion control computers, Mark I. So I need 48 Mark I, Mark II, and Mark III to make this thing. Oh, this is going to be a lot of crafting. Let's get started. Oh, actually, I just had a thought. I have noticed that occasionally some machines will power fail. And it's literally just because when I have a craft going, if enough machines are going, this Mark III Naquata fuel is actually not enough with a single large Naquata reactor. So it might be better for me to make a few more of these before actually continuing. And I can swap these out for stocking input hatches instead. So actually, let's do that first. And then I'll make the Mark 1 prototype. Now, I thought I'd be able to do some kind of cool crafting montage like I did very early in the pack, but at this point, everything is just encoding recipes and then clicking start. I don't know what I can do with that. So instead, I'll just give you progress updates as I go. So, step 1, the Compact Fusion Computer Mark 1 prototype. It's going to be the first thing I make. A classic conundrum. I have almost everything I need, except for osmium. Okay. The thing is, actually, I have so much platinum metallic powder dust, and it's not being processed fast enough. So, for the third time in this series, I'm going to redo the Platline. I think a lot of people would be annoyed at having to do that, but I'm actually excited to do that because I really like optimizing the processes and upgrading it with new technology. For example, I have the mega chemical reactor now, so I wonder how compact I could make each of these sections. And of course, it's always fun to upgrade the energy hatches and get absolutely tons of resources per second. Alright, I didn't expect to do this today, but it's time for the third iteration of the Platline. Just finished updating the basic Platline, so this is just for platinum. I now have a laser connection for the power source and an active transformer here so I can have a laser output and a regular output at the same time. The laser goes to the MCR, the regular goes to everything else. I have 2 mixers making aqua regia. I have an MCR doing all the chemical reactor steps. So I'm making nitric acid, I'm making platinum concentrate, I'm processing the platinum concentrate in this recipe so I get diluted sulfuric, nitrogen dioxide, and palladium enriched ammonia back. Also platinum salt dust and reprecipitated platinum dust. I also make ammonium chloride locally. On the other side over here that's a little harder to access, sort of on purpose, is the mainnet connection for other stuff like hydrochloric, ammonia, oxygen, water, and also calcium dust. All the platinum stuff is stored locally in the drive. So that is PMPD, platinum residue dust, platinum salt dust, reprecipitated, and refined platinum salt. Other things that are updated, I replaced the EBF with a Vulcanus because it's so much faster. And the slowest step now, surprisingly, is sifting, sort of. So if everything was working correctly, the slowest step would be the sifting. So I made 2 sitters, as I call them. Each one is a double sifter. And I've noticed something cool about the sifters, but I'll come back to that. First, let me talk about how I am constantly out of hydrogen and nitrogen because of all this ammonia that gets used. I still don't have pumps to pump those. I'm currently making the UEV pumps and also a bunch of wetware mainframes, but now I'm waiting for this fusion recipe. It's going to be like 4 hours until this is done. But that gives me time to work on the rest of the Platline, I guess. Or I could play something else. Anyway, the thing I wanted to say about the sifter is, look at this. So I have it powered with a ZPM energy hatch, right? If I turn this on, see that it uses 40,000 EU per tick? That is not 1 amp of ZPM. 1 amp of ZPM is 131,000 EU per tick. So if I overclock this by using 2 ZPM energy hatches, the base EU cost will be 4 times this amount, which is 160. 160 is less than 2 amps of ZPM, which means the second energy hatch doesn't need to be connected. So check this out. Right now I have all 4 with a single ZPM energy hatch, but if I put a ZPM energy hatch in here and hide it away, and I turn this on, it works perfectly fine, and it is not going to power fail. Isn't that crazy? And indeed, I can turn them all on. So that should speed up my platinum salt processing quite a bit because of the extra parallels and maybe the overclock. I'm not sure if it actually overclocked, but it's doing more parallels now. So this is going to go down pretty quick now. At this point, it's basically just the lack of gases that's causing the bottleneck. But that should be solved pretty soon. Well, not that soon. Palladium is also done. Everything's done in 1 MCR. I have an identical transformer setup as for the regular platinum line. And I have 2 more sitters. And I've noticed that sifting is by far the slowest step now. So I've kind of assigned the task of sifting to all the sifters at the same time. So this one is doing both platinum salt and palladium salt. And so are those ones. And so will any future sifters that I build downstairs. They're all going to share the load, and hopefully that'll help things get processed quicker, but I have a feeling I'm going to need way more sifters to keep up. Besides that, nothing special to say about palladium. Rhodium line has been updated. This is pretty long actually. I actually had 2 single blocks still in operation. I had the LUV fluid shaper and the LUV macerator, but I've upgraded them to multi-block so that I can scale it up even more in the future if I need to. I also crafted my first UHV solenoid superconductor coils. There's nothing too crazy about them, it's just that you have to make the previous tier and scan it for the data stick, and you have to do that a few times. This just gives me more parallels, so better scaling in the future. Besides that, everything is done in 1 MCR as usual. 2 Vulcani over here, and a bunch of stuff, and another sitter. This one is also sharing the load, and the palladium salt and platinum salt are they're gonna take me a long time to process. But things are processing pretty quickly now. It looks really slow if you look at these large numbers because these numbers are so big, but this was 3.6 million when I started today. But that was a few hours ago. So, pretty happy with this, but there's still 3 more lines to finish. I guess 2 more lines, realistically. Ruthenium, and then iridium and osmium, which are kind of 1 line. Let me finish off ruthenium. I might have to shift things around to get it to fit. Okay, ruthenium is done, and actually it's pretty much entirely the same as it used to be. The only difference is now I'm using a Vulcanus instead of an EBF, and also I'm using this fluid shaper for the ruthenium tetroxide instead of a single block. That's basically it. I didn't even see the need to upgrade to an MCR because this is a very, very short line. So cool. This was actually pretty easy. I didn't need to bring a laser connection. I just connected it to the rhodium line, so it's kind of a rhodium-ruthenium line now. The slowest step seems to be either the heating device or the distillus. Not really sure which, but they're both pretty slow. Luckily, it doesn't matter because the very first step is what gets me the rarest metal residue dust, and that's what I need for osmium. So let me quickly revamp the osmium line, and then let's see how fast the osmium comes in. And done. Upgraded to an MCR. Everything is done in here. I have Vulcanus for the 2 blasts. It seems to be fast enough to keep up with both. It's actually being bottlenecked by 8 tier 2 Dango distillases. This is not keeping up, which is crazy. This is making the osmium solution, and maybe I should make a mega distillation tower, but where would I put it? You know? Maybe it fits. It only needs to be 2 outputs tall, so minimum size. I don't know. I'll think about it. For now, this is fine because look at this osmium stack. When I started this, I was at around 300 osmium when I started refactoring this section, and it's at 1600. It's only been like 15 minutes. The only issue is I am constantly out of hydrogen gas, even though I'm pumping it. It makes sense because it's all going into ammonium chloride, which is NH4Cl, so it uses a lot more hydrogen than chlorine and nitrogen. Chlorine is going down. I had a lot more than this, but it's going down. Nitrogen, luckily, is able to be sustained. This brings me to a new problem, chlorine. I can always just make more pumps for hydrogen, and I think I might do that, but chlorine is harder to solve, because chlorine has no space pumping option. I have to electrolyze something, but I'm gonna have to spam a lot of industrial electrolyzers, and I don't really know where to do that. But I think I am going to do that before continuing. Well, maybe I can start crafting the compact fusion parts. I'll do both. Thank you for watching this episode of the HamCorp Training Manual. In the next episode, we will solve our chlorine shortage and craft at the very least the Mark I Compact Fusion Reactor Controller. Hopefully we can also craft the Mark II and Mark III controllers as well, but I doubt it will be without issues. See you next time.